In this Superspace Theory short, we are going to be going a little broader, a little more fanciful. Well, not fanciful, but we're going to be broadening out beyond just the basic principles and looking at an overall picture that can show how these principles can lead to a true theory of absolutely everything. So we will begin by looking at the idea of the block universe as this greater block space. Now, when we look at it, we are creating these boundaries, but these aren't necessarily, um, these are just for communication. Like, say, for instance, here. So what we're going to do, we're going to do block universe, we're going to do fields of space, as we've looked at previously. But these boundaries, these are just there for demonstration. Each of these fields leading from the energetic to the entropic, each of these fields could be infinite in either direction, right? But we're just creating this idea of the block universe because it simplifies the picture. But each spatial field could be infinite in extent. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to try to bring this down to just a few basic ingredients or components. So we're going to imagine that there is a field of infinite energy. In the Superspace Theory book, I call it absolute motion and absolute stillness, but we can just call it absolute energy and absolute entropy as well. So if we just make this initial assumption that there is a field of absolute energy without analyzing for now what that energy is, we will just say it's absolute energy. And then there is absolute entropy or stillness or void. And that means that this block universe is the boundary between them. Okay? So you could say this block universe is created as the boundary or relationship between these two essential components. We'll go 1, 2, and that this boundary of relationship is a third essential component. And so this energy is moving in this direction, and it moves a step at a time by creating an energized field at a particular level within the greater block universe. And as this field is energized, it leaps to another field and energizes this field. And then as this field is energized, it leaps to another field and energizes this field. So if we, let's just create a new layer here. If we think of, for instance, the cyclic universe model, which says that there's these two branes, you can call them fields, and that they bump into each other. And this bumping into this creates the Big Bang in this one. And then it energizes, and then eventually there's a big crunch. But that is the same as looking at fields where they interact and one energizes the other. But we're just looking at it in a larger context where these fields, each of these could be one, exactly like the cyclic universe model, brain, and then the energized one bumps, but I would say the energy bumps or leaps up to that level, right? So looking at this, let's do it again, but let's draw these fields more like the cyclic universe model here. And let's imagine that this pure energy or absolute motion, there is this energized field, very energized field. Remember, this is in a nonlinear direction, the fourth dimensional direction. So this is, we could say, this is our universe. And this is the linear 3D space. And this is the inward direction toward what we think of as the very small. So this first energized dimension, the energy is really great, and that would be what we observe as vacuum energy, zero-point energy, quantum foam. And this energy, which is just appearing and disappearing at this first energized level, leaps up and creates a bang, an explosion, which then, let's look at a single layer here. We're going to just make one layer, so this would be the quantum foam, but it's just a energized field. And there's an explosion here where the energy has leaped up, and this field is being energized. So this would be a Big Bang. And what happens as the energy spreads out in waves, however, and this energization spreads, then the energy can leap up at different points. And these would be smaller bangs, which would be like magnetars, or just the really incredible explosions that we can't explain other than saying that they come from supermassive black holes, which I do not think actually has to be the case. What we are talking about is these incredible explosions within an energized field. Okay, so that's happening, and as the field becomes energized, the energy leaps, the field is energized, and we're moving from the very energetic up to the more entropic. And that's moving from what we consider the very small in the direction of our macro universe, okay? So we can see how this is progressing, and when we look inward and we see subatomic particles, nucleons, quarks, we see, vibrating strings maybe, and we see virtual particles coming in and out of existence. We're literally looking inward, which is in the fourth dimension, because we're going out of linear space into this other direction or dimension, and we're seeing the greater and greater energy and the greater and greater energized particles. So this means that everything we're observing has to do with fields in space moving from the energetic to the entropic. The fields becoming energized, so more energy as we move down deeper into what we think of as the realms of the very small, but which is more energetic fields. Okay, so these fields are becoming more energized, and the last component, well, one of the last components is that when this energy leaps and takes place, it's creating an energy hole. So we've talked about particles and heavenly bodies as holes in space, right? So as energization occurs in a field, it's creating these energy holes, which bring energy forth. And at deeper levels, and we talked about this, at deeper levels, those holes have the, well, they appear to us as quantum particles. And then in our field, they are heavenly bodies. So that is one of the last components to this, is looking at particles and bodies as holes in space, in fields of space. And then the final portion is that, let's just go back to this, the original, one of the original. All of these energized fields are moving due to the motion of energy through the field. So you can look at it as the energy moving through the fields, or as this whole block space moving, and that's what we think of as time. So we just have these few components of this essential energy, the boundary between it and the stillness or emptiness or void. We have the energy moving through progressive fields, energizing them by creating these energy holes, and that these holes in fields are what we observe to be particles at deeper levels, or bodies, heavenly bodies, or black holes in our space. And all of this is moving, as it should be, from energy toward entropy. And that explains all of these different phenomena, from what the source of energy is, to the various kinds of particles and why they become more energetic as we move inward, or actually deeper. It gives us the nature of time as the overall motion of this block universe, gravity as the curvature of holes in rising fields, a rising field of space in our universe. And it also, I won't get into this now, but it tells us why gravity becomes weaker as we go in, because this becomes so energetic and the energy is rising quicker to where this, the motion of the field rising up and then linear objects rolling in, it just is not the same at these more energetic levels, but I won't try to get into that. But what we're seeing here is just these few components. If we just posit this essential energy moving toward this essential stillness, and then creating these fields, or moving through these fields, these dimensional fields, from the energetic to the entropic, and that these fields are each three-dimensional spatial fields in their own right. And this really describes all the different forces that we're observing and particles in just a few with just a few different components. And I know there's probably questions and that's not entirely clear, and the art has much to be desired. But I just wanted to lay out a very basic idea about where superspace theory can go as far as pulling together all of these different components of our universe and beyond. Thank you for watching.